Hello everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic day today. Today, Scotty and I are going to be unboxing the second of the Commander decks for Commander Masters, the Sliver Gravemother. Now, I'm really looking forward to this one as well. I usually tend to love tribal decks, and Slivers are, well, one of the first tribals I've ever fought against. One of my best friends growing up had a Sliver deck. Back then there wasn't any Commander decks, but he had a Sliver tribal, and we just played against each other, and yeah, it was really cool and fun, and I've always loved it. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, Scotty, for this introduction. So if you're new to Slivers, the way that they work is as simple as every Sliver has an ability, and that ability tends to go to all other Slivers, so long as they are in play. So this is why these Slivers are so sought after. Also, they are classic. They've been around since forever. I don't even remember if it was Tempest or Stronghold that introduced Slivers. Let me know in the comments down below. It's gonna be an interesting one. And yeah, we've already unboxed and given a review of Zolodoc, the Eldrazi Unbound deck. We will soon also have a how to upgrade guide of that deck, so make sure to stick around to the channel for that. And yeah, without further ado, let's have a look at the Sliver Gravemother. So if you're new to our channel, the way that we look at decks is we look at the precon as is. I haven't looked at the cards inside, so what will happen is we will go through the deck card by card, and we will analyze how they are overall, and then give a final score of the precon deck, of how playable it is, how strong it is, and basically we score them against all the other decks inside of the set and the expansion. The previous one was scored 6 out of 10, so I'm hoping this one scores a bit higher. Either way, this is going to be a fun one. Also, as usual, for the more popular decks, we'll try and get a guide on how to upgrade them, and so yep, make sure to stick around. Now, what are the contents of the deck? Each deck contains 100 cards, and you get a deck box, and each deck contains 100 cards. Out of these, only 10 are new. So unfortunately, we're getting less and less new cards, but hey-oh. You get a deck box, 10 double-sided tokens, a foil-etched display thick commander, the life wheel, the strategy insert, and a Ramfirst card, and also you get a little booster. That's a collector sample booster, and it has 3 cards. One is a token, and 2 are going to be the samples for the alternate frame / art of the collector's boosters. So without further ado, let's open it up and see what's inside. This one was printed in Belgium. As usual, we like the fact that it's printed in Belgium because it tends to bend foiling a lot less than United States printing. Now, here we have Hive Minds. Everyone's thinking about them. Ha ha ha. Very punny. So that's because, of course, as I said, every little sliver helps each other and it gives their ability to them. So I managed to finally get it out. That was harder than it should have been. Now you get the cardboard of the commander and some cardboard cutouts that you can use as counters or whatever, and then you get the deck. Unlike the previous decks that used to come with everything outside and then the deck inside, you get everything inside this little box now. And of course, the identity of the commander of this deck, it is WUBRG. So all the 5 colors of Magic the Gathering, and this is going to be an interesting one. And when you're talking about WUBRG, I will be looking at how easy it is to actually cast WUBRG. So the mana base is going to be extremely important in these decks. And again, we haven't really discussed this because we discussed in the last deck overview, but these decks are extremely expensive. So you'd reckon that for this much money, you will get a decent mana base. So let's hope we get it. Now, here's the life wheel. Here's the little guide and reference that you can use to have an intro about the deck, about your commander. There's a little bit of fluff about the story. You can pause if you're interested. Same thing about the Gravemother here. Then you get the 10 tokens and the thick boy commander. You get the 100 card deck and the Commander Masters sample. You will start with a sample and then we'll analyze all the rest of the commander cards. Now, I liked Commander Masters, but as we said in our previous guide and videos, really these cards are way too expensive for what they are. So, boom, Reality Shift. This is an uncommon, and it's in the borderless version. Very beautiful though, it's an instant. And then we get, Hatchery Sliver, which is very topical. That's really nice. So you can see here, replicate, and then each Sliver spell you cast has replicate, and the replicate cost is equal to its mana cost. So that's really, really nice, and yeah, very topical. I guess they did it on purpose. Okay, now let's have a look at the Sliver Gravemother. Now, the Sliver Gravemother is a Wooburg commander, so it has every color identity, and it's a 6/6 sliver that has the legend rule, does not apply to slivers you control, which is really nice because there are some really nasty slivers out there that are legendary. And then each sliver card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value, and then Encore 5 here, and it's X generic, which is fairly decent. You exile this card from the graveyard for each opponent. You create a token copy that attacks that opponent. This turn, if able, they gain haste, sacrifice him at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery. So you get to reuse for one turn your little slivers. You do exile them though, so they don't get reanimated forever, but it's fine. Then we get the Sliver Army and a Sliver token. Very beautiful token, I must say. Then you get a copy and another Sliver token, another copy, 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 another Sliver token. 2 hours later, another copy, another Sliver token, another copy, another Sliver token, another copy, another Sliver token, and another copy, another Sliver. No, haha! We got the Monarch. Yay! Oh yeah, because one of the new cards will have the Monarch ability, I guess. Okay, and then we get to look at the deck proper. This is gonna be an interesting one. Also, yeah, shout out for the returning viewers. We're trying something new with the camera. Let us know if there's any issues with it. We'll go back to the original way of filming otherwise. Anyway, let's try and get this open. Okie dokie, so Sliver Gravemother, which if I'm not mistaken is the most expensive card in the deck. Very beautiful foil. And then we get the general of the deck, which is Rukarumel, Biologist, which also costs Wooburg, is a 3/3 human wizard, and as it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, slivers you control, and non-token creatures you control out of the chosen type in addition to the other creature's type. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So this makes everything of the chosen creature type, which is not bad. I guess you could also use it in dragon decks and other decks, so you can just kind of play other cards of other tribals and apply them to the board. The problem is, of course, the abilities on the card are not changed. It's just a card type. And then for 3 generic and tap, you create a colorless Sliver creature token, which we've seen before. Okay, so as you can probably notice, unfortunately, we've had some technical difficulties, and the portion of the whole deck analysis needs to be done over. So the cards that you'll see here, they won't be in the order that you'll find them when you're unboxing, unfortunately. And yeah, we've already just looked at the whole deck and gave the whole analysis. So first we'll start with the slivers, and then we'll move on to the other type of cards, because we've already divided them and I put them in a different order that they're arriving from into the box. So the first one is going to be the Wriggle Sliver, which is one of the newer cards. This is a 3/3 sliver. It costs 4, 3 generic and 1 white, and it gives all slivers, whenever a sliver enters the battlefield, slivers you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn if you're the monarch. Otherwise, you become the monarch. And this is an okay creature. I'm not a huge fan of the monarch ability. It's not something that I really like. And on top of that, the +1/+1 doesn't stay there. It's not a counter, it's just a general buff. So this is one of the cards that I would cut out. Next, we have this Taunting Sliver, which is a 3/3 sliver that costs 3 generic and 1 blue. And whenever it enters the battlefield, you choose target creature an opponent controls and it gets goaded. So this is really, really good. And again, this happens for every sliver that enters the battlefield, even if it's a token. So that's really wonderful. Next, we have Titan of Lijar, which is a 6/6 illusion. It's one of the more expensive cards of the set if you've seen our shorts. This is a 4 generic and 2 blue to cast. So it's 6 mana to cast it overall. So it's a 6/6 for 6, which is great. And whenever it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. It is of that creature type on top of all the other creature types. And whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may draw a card for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it, and if you do, discard a card. And this is insanely strong. This is one of the more expensive ones for a reason, because it is extremely good for any tribal deck, not just slivers, but you have to be mindful of the fact that you need to be able to cast the cards that you draw. So if you're going to draw, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 10 cards, you need to be able to cast them or to have unlimited space in your hand, so you can have unlimited uncapped hand size to be able to use this effectively. Otherwise it could turn out to be annoying. Yes, you can encore cards with the Sliver Gravemother. The problem is that encore exiles them from the graveyard, so that's not something that we want. So definitely great card, just be mindful of how you use it. Next up we have Lazarus Sliver. This is a 4/4 zombie sliver for 3 generic and 1 black. Sliver's creatures you control have a flick 2, which means that whenever it becomes blocked, defending player loses 2 life, and whenever a non-token sliver you control dies, you amass 2 slivers. So this is extremely good, because if a sliver were to die, even when you sacrifice it, for example, with the Encore ability, then you get to create a token or you amass 2, which is extremely strong because it's a sliver that gets all the abilities of all other slivers. And again, the idea of this whole deck is that the slivers on the battlefield are the ones giving you the ability that you need for your deck to be amazing. So what you want to be doing realistically is keep your slivers alive as much as possible, because they're all pieces of the puzzle to be able to make all your slivers really strong. Then we have the Capricious Sliver, which is a 3/3 sliver that is a 3 generic and 1 red, and it gives all slivers you control that whenever they deal combat damage to a player, you exile the top card of your library. You may play this card this turn. So this is for every sliver that deals combat damage to a player. And the problem is here, again, you need to be able to play those cards just like the Titan of Lijar. Now, if you have a lot of mana, no worries. But otherwise, playing this can be a double-edged sword, as you don't want to be able to, not use those cards at all that you get from top of the library. So you really want to be able to use this whenever you have enough mana or mana generation to cast it. Next up we have the Hatchery Sliver, which we saw in our collector booster sample. So it allows to replicate, which means that you can replicate and copy the spell for as many times as you want, for as long as you pay the replicate cost, and it gives replicate to everybody on the battlefield. That's a sliver that you control, which is extremely good. Then we have the Bonsai Sliver, which is a 2/2 that gives all your sliver creatures double strike, and this is an insanely good sliver. I cannot stress it enough. Then we have the Gale Rider Sliver, which is a 1/1 that gives slivers you control flying, and it's really cheap. It only costs 1 blue. Very good strong sliver. Then you get the Synapse Sliver, which is a sliver that is a 3/3, and whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its control may draw a card. So again, same idea. You have a lot of draw in your deck thanks to all these slivers, but the idea is it really can escalate and exponentially, so you want to be able to have a way to cast these spells, otherwise you're just overly reaching into your deck for nothing. Then we get the Siphon Sliver, which is a 2/2, and it gives lifelink to all slivers you control. And it's funny because it's not a white lifelinker like the other type of sliver that exists that gives lifelink. I think it was a Time Spiral Sliver, if I'm not mistaken. That is not in this deck, unfortunately, but still you get a way to give lifelink to all your slivers, and it's relatively cheap, so it's quite a good one. Then you get Spiteful Sliver, which is a 2/2 sliver, and it gives all your slivers that whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals damage to target player or planeswalker. So this is extremely good, but you have to be mindful. So far, most of the slivers you've seen are fairly small, and you need to have in play the slivers or buff ways to make your slivers bigger. Otherwise, you're just going to be losing important pieces of a puzzle. Again, the important part about slivers is keeping them on board so they can all do their thing together. Next up, you get the Bruce Sliver, which is a 3/3 sliver that whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller creates a 1/1 sliver token. So this is one of those that creates the sliver tokens that we saw earlier. It's a very good one because it allows you to just multiply your slivers over and over, and it's extremely good. Then you get the Megantic Sliver, which is a 3/3 that buffs all your slivers permanently for as long as you control it, and it gives a +3/+3. It is a bit expensive, but it's definitely worth it to make your slivers that much bigger. And then you get the Realm Walker, which is a 2/3 shapeshifter changeling, so it's every type, and when it enters the battlefield, you choose the sliver type, or any type really, and you may look at the top card of your library of any time, and you may cast creature spells of the chosen type on top of your library. So this is extremely good for tribal and extremely good for the slivers. Then you get the Cloud Shredder Sliver, which is a 1/1 sliver that costs Boros, and it gives all your slivers flying and haste. Extremely good because it gives you 2 abilities, and it was printed in Modern Horizon. Then you get the Sliver Hive Lord, which is a great card and a great reprint. It's a 5/5 legendary sliver. It costs Wooburg, so it's not easy to cast, and its slivers you control have indestructible. An extremely good sliver for any sliver deck. Then you get Constricting Sliver, which is a 3/3 sliver that costs 6, so it's quite expensive, and it gives all your slivers the ability that when they enter the battlefield, you may exile target creature an opponent controls until the creature leaves the battlefield, so it makes every sliver available a prison, which is extremely good, especially if you have a lot of small generating creatures. This is a way to extra remove target creatures from the board, and if you have a lot of token generation, that even better, because then you just imprison the whole board of your opponent. Then we get the Sentinel Sliver, and this allows for all slivers you control to get Vigilance, which is extremely good. It's a 2/2 for 2. Wonderful card in the deck. Then you get the Sinew Sliver, another buff sliver, gives all slivers +1/+1. It's a 1/1 and it only costs 2. Very good. Then you get the Diffusion Sliver. So it's a great defensive sliver that gives all slivers on your board that you control, that whenever they become the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its control pays 2 generic. Extremely good and good protection, and it's very cheap. Shifting Sliver, another great one. It's a 2/2 and it makes all your slivers unblockable unless your opponents have slivers, and then they can only block them with slivers. Then you get another Flying Sliver, which is a Wing Sliver. It's a 1/1, costs only 2. All slivers have flying, another great piece of the puzzle, just like the previous one. Then you get the Clot Sliver, which is a 1/1 and allows to give all slivers the regenerate ability only for 2 generic, and that's wonderful because then you can just keep bringing back the powerful slivers or the key important slivers in play. If you play this, I would advise you to keep some mana free to save up your slivers, especially your commander. You really need to use this ability wisely. Then you get another way to regenerate slivers with a Crypt Sliver. It's a 1/1 for 2 and it gives all slivers the ability to tap and regenerate target sliver. Another amazing way to regenerate all your slivers. Then you get the Blaze Sliver, which is a 2/2. All slivers creatures get +1/+0. Now, as you see, this is one of those creatures that there are few in the deck, and it buffs +1/+0, so it buffs power and not toughness, and I would advise you to exchange these ones for the ones that actually tend to buff both powers and toughness. It's better to do it that way, but if you don't have them, keep them in the deck. They're not bad. Then you get the Blood Sliver, which is a 2/2. Slivers you control have haste, another great way to give haste to your creatures. This is yet another one of those ones that I was talking about. The Bone Splitter Sliver gives all the slivers +2/+0, and it's a 2/2. It's okay, it's good, it's fairly strong, and again, it's better to power up all power and toughness, but I would keep at least 1 or 2 of these ones, just like the Cleaving Sliver. It does the same thing as that one, and it costs the same amount. And yes, there's duplication because you want to be able to buff your creatures a bit better, so it's always good to have extra. Hollowhead Sliver is a 2/2 that gives rummage to all your slivers. It's not bad at all. It allows you to draw even more and get rid of those cards that you don't necessarily need. And again, with the Gravemother, you can always just cast slivers from your graveyard for the Anchor cost. So that's always a decent way to get around when you don't have cards that you necessarily need right away. And then you have a Striking Sliver, which is a 1/1 that gives first strike to all of the slivers you control. Then you get a Two-Headed Sliver. It gives menace to all of the slivers, and that's really strong. Then we start going into the mana generation, which is extremely important for this deck. This is a Gem High Sliver. It's a 1/1. It gives all slivers the ability to tap and add 1 mana of any color. Extremely important card for your deck. Just like the Mana Weft Sliver, which is the same card as before. Extremely good, and these are extremely important, so do not remove them from the deck. At least that's my advice. Then you get the My Sliver. This is a 2/2 that gives all slivers +2/+2, extremely strong as we discussed before. Quick Sliver that gives flash to all sliver spells, which is wonderful, and it also has flash, but here is one of the cards that maybe I will remove, because the idea is that slivers on your side, you really want to be playing them as soon as possible. There are very few slivers that you want to use defensively, and realistically there are other spells or things that you can add to the deck, and this is one of the cards that I would remove. And then you get Venom Sliver that gives all your slivers Death Touch for 2, and it's a 1/1. Again, very wonderful card. There is a sliver that is not in this deck that also gives poison to all your slivers. It's up to you which one you want to use. You can use both, but realistically this makes your slivers extremely dangerous, because overall it turns them into a creature removal so long as you have ability to defend against the creatures attacking you. So this is a decent sliver. Another wonderful one that's absolutely a must keep is the Crystalline Sliver. This is a 2/2 that gives all your slivers Shroud. This is a wonderful important creature that I would never ever remove from the deck. Then we have the Firewake Sliver, which is a 1/1, gives haste to all your slivers, and then the slivers get an extra ability of 1 generic tapped and sacrifice their permanent. Target sliver gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. This is one of those that I would cut. There are better ones that give more permanent buffing and better things that you can add to the deck eventually, so I would rather cut this one. Then you get the Harmonic Sliver. It gives all slivers, when this permanent enters the battlefield, you destroy target artifact or enchantment. This is extremely strong in Commander. As you might have noticed, if you're a new player, Commander players love to play a lot of artifacts and a lot of enchantments, and they're extremely strong, so being able to remove those, it's extremely important, and this is a creature that I will absolutely keep, just like I would absolutely keep the Hibernation Sliver. This allows to give all your slivers pay to life, return this permanent to its owner's hand. So this is an extremely good one because it allows you to protect any of the slivers, including your Sliver Gravemother Commander, and it bypasses the command text when you cast it from hand, in case you didn't know. So that means that you can just put it back into your hand and then cast it for a Wooburg and not pay the command text. So wonderful one. Then we get the Lava Belly Sliver, which is a 2/2 that allows to give all slivers you control. When this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player and Planeswalker, and you gain 1 life. This is one of those that I would remove. It's not as strong, and there are better things to replace it with. Then you get the Necrotic one. The Necrotic Sliver is a 2/2 that gives all slivers 3 generic and sacrifice the permanent to destroy target permanent, effectively transforming all your slivers into a destroy permanent bomb, and this is insanely strong, and it's an uncommon. Very good. So that's it for the slivers slot. Very good slivers synergy, and they have a lot of great cards in there. Next up, we'll have a look at the rest of the slots of the deck. We'll start with the enchantment. There's only one enchantment, and it's one of the newer cards. It's called Descendant's Fury. It is a 4 caster enchantment, and whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice one of them, and if you do, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares the creature type with the sacrificed creature, and then put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library. This is extremely strong and a great enchantment that will keep inside because it allows you to get better slivers in. And again, if you have some sliver tokens to sack to this, it's even better. Next, you get the 4, the Ancestors Instant. This is a 3 caster. You choose a creature type, you look at the top 6 cards of your library, you may reveal any number of cards of the chosen type from among them and put the revealed cards onto your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and you can flashback it. It's a decent way to get through the top of your deck to get some slivers. It's not a bad one, but there are better ways to get through your deck and better draw engines. Then you get the sorcery slot, which is the first one is a Cleansing Nova. This is a 5 caster, and you choose one, either destroy all creatures or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. This is a good one. It's a good removal, and it's great to have some board wipes inside of the deck. Of course, this is something that I would replace with better board wipes, but it's not bad. Then you get Harsh Mercy, which is a 2 generic and 1 white sorcery, and it says that each player chooses a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of that type chosen this way, and they cannot be regenerated. And this is wonderful because it really does allow you to keep all your slivers and creatures in play. So this is amazing. I can't stress it enough, and this is something I will keep. Then you get Crippling Fear, which is a board white. It costs 4 and choose a creature type. Creatures that are not chosen type get -3/-3, but this is something that I would remove and replace with something better, because realistically there are better board wipes, and -3/-3 doesn't really hit all of the decks. And then you get Decimate, which is a way to remove artifact, creature, enchantment, and land. So you destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land for 4. This is not a bad removal. It allows you to spot remove some problematic things, but there are better ones in the slot. So this is something that can go, but it's good to have. Then we start looking at other ways to get through your deck. You have Distant Melody. You choose a creature type. You draw a card for each permanent you control of that type, and it costs 4. Again, in the theme of the Titan of Jar and all the other cards, be careful of how many cards you're going to draw and if you can play them all. Then you get Windfall, which is a classic. Each player discards their hand, then draws equal cards to the greatest amount of cards that player discarded. Now, this is something that I usually don't want to play because I don't want to give my opponents advantages and draws. But it's a decent one in a way if you don't have enough cards in hand. Like, for example, you only have 1 card in hand and your opponents have, I don't know, 5 or 6, then it's a good card. But I would cut it out of the deck if possible. Then you get Cultivate, which is a sorcery. It costs 3 and it allows you to search for 2 basic line cards, put 1 in hand and 1 tapped into play. Now, the annoying part is that it's only basic lands, but this is an extremely important and strong spell to get through your deck, to get those mana to cast your Warburg spells, and it's really important. Just like Farseek, I said the Farseek allows you to go for any plains, island, swamp, or mountain. So this is extremely good because it allows you to get those triumphs, those dual lands, and those shock lands. Absolutely. Just like Nature Lore, it allows you to search for a forest card, but you can go and fetch one of the dual land. Then you get 3 visits, same thing, forest card, and put it in the battlefield, then shuffle. Extremely good. So now we move on to the artifacts. First off, you get the Icon of Ancestry. This is a classic for tribals. You choose a type, and then creatures of that type get +1/+1. Then you can pay 3 and tap this. And you look at the 3 cards of your library, you may reveal a card with a chosen type among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest in the bottom in any order. Another great one that I always use in my tribe is the Vanquisher's Banner. Costs 5 generic, it's an artifact. Again, choose a creature type, then all of them get +1/+1, and whenever a creature of the chosen type is cast by yourself, you draw a card. Extremely strong. Then you get Arcane Signet, which is a classic and a wonderful addition and a must in this deck. Just like the Fellwar Sun, a must in this deck because you're playing Warburg. And then you get Soul Ring, another classic addition. Herald's Horn is another great little card that I always add in my tribals because it makes all the creatures of a chosen type cost 1 generic less to cast. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature of a chosen type, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. So that's extremely strong. Then you get Pillar of Origins, another great way to mana fix yourself. It's a 2 generic and you choose a creature type, and then you can tap and add 1 mana of any color to cast a creature of the chosen type. Extremely strong card, and I really love this. And then we started looking at the lands, and unfortunately from what I saw, these lands are just the pain point of this deck. So you start looking and you have, initially you have the dual lands that come into play tap, then you get an Exotic Orchard, an Ash Barrens, which is decent enough because at least you can go for basic land cycling. Unfortunately, you'll have to land cycle for basic land. Command Tower, absolutely important. Path of Ancestry, another great land to add 1 mana of any color, but unfortunately it comes into play tapped. And I will discuss after this some of the things that I would have done with the deck. So unfortunately this comes into play tapped and it's not as great. Floodplains, now you start seeing some of the lands that allow you to fetch but come into play tapped. So Floodplains allows you to look for an island or a plains. Then now you start to see one of the triumphs, the fake triumphs, because they're not triumphs because they don't have the basic land types here. So they don't have plains, forests, etc, etc. So these are a little bit annoying. They're not like the triumphs in New Capenna or in Zendikar Rising, and they enter the battlefield tapped. So this is a bit annoying because you cannot fetch them. Then you get the grasslands, another fetch one. Then the jungle shrine, which is another triumph, another fetch one. The mountain valley, the opulent palace, another triumph. Nomad outpost, another triumph. Mystic monastery, another triumph. And when I say triumphs, they're the fake triumphs. Then the rock tar pit, which is another fetch one. Sunset citadel, another triumph. Seaside citadel and savage lands, another triumph. Now unclaimed territory and secluded courtyard are two cards that I always play. And my tribals, they're extremely important alongside Cavern of Souls, for example. And this is wonderful because this one allows you to play 1 mana of any color of any of the creature chosen type. So that's wonderful. And this one allows you to also pay an ability cost for it. So they're very good cards that I definitely play in all my tribals. Then we go back to the fake dual lands and another Cindergale, and then a Canopy Vista, the Smoldering Marsh, and the Sunken Hollow, the fake dual lands. And then we get 2 plains, 2 islands, 2 swamps, 2 mountains, and 3 forests. So, having looked at this deck, here's the review for this proper deck. Now, this deck is wonderful because of the addition of the slivers. This is truly a Sliver Swarm deck. Unlike the Eldrazi Unbound, which only had 10 Eldrazi here, the meat and potatoes are your slivers. And again, slivers are wonderful because you don't need that many enchantments, sorceries, and instants because the abilities that you would get off of them, they're usually, or artifacts as well, they're usually inside of slivers. So it's really wonderful to have them there. And you do get quite a few decent ones in here. And realistically, it gives you a great base to build upon from here. Now, keep in mind that sliver decks tend to be expensive in general. And unfortunately, these decks are being marked up because there's no MSRP because they're extremely popular. And so be careful with that. But it's an extremely good base that over time you can definitely build an amazing sliver deck from. Now, the unfortunate side is in the other slots. So first off, let's not look at the lands just yet. Let's go into the enchantments. There are some enchantments that allow you to draw or that allow you to get card advantage, whether it's lands or whether it's artifacts that gives you treasures, so on and so forth. So the enchantment slot is where I would add a bit more to give a little bit more oomph to your deck and to allow you to go for the covering the faults of this deck, because you need to be able to have Wooburg to be able to cast your commander, you need to be able to have a bit more protection, you need to be able to get more lands into play quicker. So this is definitely something that in the enchantment, in the instants, and in the sorcery slot, this is where I would look at. For example, instants, I would add more interaction, spot removal, and so on and so forth. Not too much, but that's important to have. And same thing for sorceries, I would add better board wipe and overall better ways to get through my deck and get the lands and the cards that I want so that I can have my sliver plan unfold and become the true Hive mastermind. The usual slots that I would say here is you want protection because Tribal really wants to keep those creature cards that you've managed to play and put into play protected. So you want the Teferi's protection, you want all of the fog effects, which is not really fog effects that you want, like Heroic Intervention. You want those effects that allow you to keep your creatures protected, and this is what I would do more for the slots. But otherwise, there's a very good base. Now, looking at artifacts, realistically, here you're too short of the usual ones that I like to put in all my tribals, because the Herald Sword and Vanquish's Banner and Icon of Ancestry are in all my tribal decks, but I usually add the Door of Destinies, which is a really good card that was recently reprinted in the Lord of the Rings precons. and the other one is the coat of arms. So these two cards are essential for this, and as I said before, we will give you a proper upgrade guide of this deck and how we will go about and making it much stronger and give you a plethora of options. But this is something that you're thinking about it. This already has 3 extremely good slots, so it's not that hard to go there. Now, the only problem here is that you're missing the artifacts that ramp you into color. So realistically, you'll want to start putting more of the very good artifacts or normal artifacts like the insignias, like the sigils. You want to be able to start putting those ones in here, or you can also of course get, you know, some of the bigger stuff, but here this is lacking. So you only have 4 for the Wolfberg, and realistically the pinpoint of this deck is the mana generation. So here it's very lacking in the artifact slot, and even more so in the land slot. The land slot is extremely lacking. I thought that realistically they would put at least some of the shock lands in here. I wouldn't expect them to put the really expensive fetch lands in here, but at least some of the shock lands, or at least some of the triumphs. And I believe that, yeah, okay, there are some really expensive reprints in here, but I would rather lose maybe one of those and remove some of the slivers and then put the triumphs from Zendikar and from New Capenna, rather than have those cards, and then I would be able to actually go and fetch the triumphs with these spells, and it would have been so much better. Because in a deck like this, if you're not able to cast your Warburg, if you're not able to get the colors that you need ASAP, and again you only have like I think 2 creatures in here that allow you to cast any mana, and only like 3 here that allow you to cast any mana, then you're gonna be struggling to cast your creatures. And this is why overall this deck gets a 7 out of 10 score. It could easily have been an 8 out of 10, one of the best tribals that they would have made, and I could have foregone the enchantment slot, the instant slot, and even the sorcery slot to be like this, so thin because of the nature of slivers. But the fact that the mana generation is so extremely piss poor, and on top of that the lands that you're given are extremely awful. And remember, you're paying premium price for this. This is an £80 deck, as the lowest that I've seen. Some people are selling it for close to $200, so this is an insane thing to have. It's a travesty not to have at least some of those lands that have been recently reprinted, so it's not something that you're adding too much value to the deck. Again, I understand you can't play all the dual lands, or you can't give all the fetch lands, but a balance should have been struck. So this is it for our video here. I hope you've enjoyed our review of this. Stick around to the channel, as we will be giving you a guide to upgrading this deck, and also we'll be reviewing the other decks in the Commander series of Commander Masters. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. From Scotty and I, we thank you very much. Please make sure to like our content and to subscribe to the channel. It really does help small channels like ours a lot. You have no idea. And do remember to leave a comment on what you like best about this deck and what you would change in the comments below, because I do read and reply to every single one of them. And then until the next video, we wish you a lovely day, a blessed day. Be good, be kind, and have a good one. Bye!